Hey, welcome back everybody. Great to see you on this Wednesday out there. Hope we all had a wonderful first half of the week and we finally made it to hump day here. And with that arrival to hump day, we've got some pretty interesting weather beginning across much of the country. And this is only really the start of what is likely to be a very long-lasting storm system that impacts many of us now through really all the way up to Christmas. This thing's going to hang around for a while and bring with it all sorts of trouble, from lots of rainfall to gusty winds to potentially even storm surge. I know it's December, but all of those things are possible here with this storm system as it tracks through the southeast and maybe even up into the northeast, where it could even potentially bring some wintry weather on down the road. So a lot to break down in this video, obviously. Now, if you haven't already subscribed, definitely consider doing so. If you like the video, make sure to hit that like button, and of course, hit that bell for the latest notifications every time I upload. Also, let me know what you're seeing out there in the comments. Let me know where you're watching from, and also tell me if you got any exciting plans today. Personally, I've got my last exam here coming up in a couple of hours. I'm going to go take that. I should do pretty good on it. It is my meteorology exam, so I would hope I do pretty good on that one at least, even if I didn't do great on the others. But that's kind of what I've got planned for today, and then after that, it's pretty much smooth sailing till Christmas. So that's a little bit about my day. Again, let me know kind of what you've got planned this week in the comments below. With that said, though, let's go ahead and jump into your forecast here on this Wednesday. All right, so we're going to start off here by looking at our visible satellite, and the sun is definitely beginning to kind of open up the ability of our satellite to look at the United States cloud cover, and overall speaking, a pretty quiet morning for a lot of folks. Definitely some clouds out around sections of the southeast through portions of Florida and the coastal plain of Georgia and South Carolina, seeing some cloud cover this morning. Also some higher level clouds moving on through the Great Lakes and Northeast. That is definitely going to help to bring some lake effect snow today, as you can see that flow coming across the lakes here will definitely lead to some snow showers through sections of New York State and other sections of New England this afternoon. But the big story today is definitely going to be that storm system that begins to unfold across sections of the desert southwest, and that is going to bring a lot of snow for some folks, ice for others, and rain for others as well, and some people might even get all three. So definitely a very impactful storm for you folks down there, and we'll definitely cover the impacts of that in today's video. Now, taking a look at current radar imagery as well as our watches and warnings, everyone east of the Mississippi River this morning, overall speaking, pretty quiet. Again, we do have some lake effect snow showers moving on through sections of the UP of Michigan, out near Toronto, Canada, and into sections of upstate New York and in other parts of New England through Vermont. And we do have some winter weather advisories up for that, as a couple inches of snow could definitely accumulate where you folks get kind of some of those bands to line up over the same areas. Now, further south of there, we are seeing some rain in Florida this morning, but nothing too out of the ordinary there, just kind of some rain showers moving on through South Florida, really south of the I-4 corridor, down there towards Miami and into the Keys. Now, the bigger story today is definitely going to be all of these winter weather watches and warnings up into sections of New Mexico, Colorado, Kansas, and extreme northwestern Texas panhandle and extreme western Oklahoma panhandle. Going to see some wintry weather over the next couple of days. And you'll already notice here's that plume of moisture coming out of the Gulf, helping to feed this storm system, which will definitely help to allow that snow to accumulate, as we have plenty of moisture to kind of wring out of the atmosphere. All right, so I'm going to start by showing you kind of the eastern United States weather over the next 48 hours or so, and then I'm going to dive into where we're seeing the actual storm system in the New Mexico, Colorado, Texas area after. So I know you're going to see a whole bunch of stuff happening on your map down there, but just wait one moment and I'll show you another map and we'll dive into that a little bit more. But talking about everywhere else on the map here, again, we could see some snow showers and snow squalls this afternoon moving on through upstate New York. So if you're up there living in that area, definitely let me know if you see any of that snow this afternoon and evening, and tell me how much of that accumulates. We could even see some of those snow showers make it as far east as Massachusetts. You'll notice here on your map a pretty strong flow off the lake, so wouldn't be surprised to see those snow showers break even into western Massachusetts, potentially as far east as Boston, seeing some flurries or a light snow shower or two move through this afternoon or evening. Now, other than that, today we've got high pressure really dominating the pattern over much of the East Coast, so that flow around it will allow for some showers to continue through sections of Florida and obviously also around that high pressure into Texas, where we have that bigger storm system ongoing. But again, I'll talk about that a little more in depth here in just a moment. Now, going into this evening and into the overnight tonight, overall, things really aren't going to change all that much. Still some scattered snow showers up into the northeast, but as we move this ahead, going into our afternoon tomorrow, really more of the same. Still just kind of nice weather, average December temperatures for most of us as this high pressure continues to anchor itself over the east coast. Again, could still see some scattered rain showers through Florida throughout the afternoon and evening tomorrow on Thursday. But going into Friday, that's whenever our storm system back out west begins to slowly push eastbound, and we could see a couple more of those impacts really begin to be felt across areas further east. Alright, so let's kind of zoom in here a little bit and talk about this storm system itself over this part of the country. And already this morning we're waking up to some showers in the Texas and Oklahoma panhandle, and even a little bit of a wintry mix down there for you folks in southwestern Kansas. Going into this afternoon, though, precipitation will continue to build into the area, and I think today will be more of a rain event for most folks throughout Texas and western Oklahoma and even into much of western Kansas. Most of the snow and wintry weather that falls today is going to be over the higher elevations here of northeastern New Mexico and into southern Colorado, where that snow will continue to pile up in those higher elevations throughout much of this afternoon and evening. Now, going into the overnight, that story stays pretty similar, but you'll notice as we go further into the overnight, that rain-snow line tries to push eastbound a little bit here, and we could see that rain change over to a wet, heavy snow in extreme western Kansas, maybe the extreme western tip of Oklahoma, and same thing for kind of the extreme northwestern section of the Texas Panhandle. So that transition could begin overnight and likely continue into tomorrow afternoon, where these waves of precipitation continue, and that snow will continue to pile up in those higher elevations of New Mexico, Colorado. But now the snow is going to start falling and sticking in places like the Oklahoma and Texas Panhandle and through much of western Kansas itself. Again, really going into tomorrow evening is when that transition should take hold for most folks, but really should begin as early as overnight tonight. But I think by the time we hit tomorrow evening, really most of us should get some snow out of that. And then we get one last little thumping of snow here on the backside as this storm system is pulling away during the overnight hours of Thursday. And then this is as far out as this model goes into Friday morning. Should be dealing with, at that point, really just more rain than anything this time for central Kansas, central Oklahoma, and down into north central Texas as well. Okay, so let's kind of talk about some snowfall totals here as well as some ice totals, and then we'll take a look at a couple more maps as well. So again, the snowfall total map, I think the places that see the most snow will definitely be the highest elevations here of northern New Mexico and southern Colorado, where honestly some of you folks could be pushing 2 feet of snow by the end of this, and this forecast is straight from the National Weather Service in these places. So, they're very familiar with the terrain there, and very possible. Now, for you folks kind of more into western Texas, Oklahoma, and Kansas, I think 1 to 3 inches is going to be a pretty safe bet by the time all is said and done. After, we deal with more rain the next couple of, we deal with more rain today before switching over to that snow going into tomorrow. And that's whenever we could get that quick 1 to 3 inches of snow accumulating on just about all surfaces. Now, for the foothills of Colorado here, 3 to 5 inches of snow looks like a pretty safe bet here, just south of the Denver metro, but outside of the highest peaks. Again, about 3 to 5 inches of snow looking like a pretty safe bet in that area. Excuse me. So the next map I'm going to show you here is ice accumulation this afternoon, and you'll notice we've got a pretty good shot at seeing, some relatively impactful accumulations of ice, upwards of 1/10 of an inch, and maybe even close to 2/10 of an inch down here in extreme kind of southeastern Colorado there and into western Kansas. I think that's where we're going to see most of those ice impacts. And again, anytime you get past 1/10 of an inch of ice, that's when things kind of begin to get dangerous, and those impacts really begin to increase. And because of that, looking at our overall winter storm impacts for this system, a lot of folks going to be in major impacts to even extreme impacts there in those highest peaks of northern New Mexico. But overall, at least minor to moderate impacts, very widespread here for much of this part of the country, kind of in this section of extreme western Oklahoma into northern Texas and into western Kansas as well. So you don't have to necessarily just be in those highest elevations of the Rockies to be impacted by the storm system, as a lot of people are going to definitely see impacts as a whole. Alrighty, so that's kind of the storm system right now and what it's expected to do over the next couple of days. Let's time this out now and talk about those impacts possible in the southeast and up the east coast going into later this weekend and into next week. All right, we talked about this yesterday. There's a couple pieces of energy that are going to kind of work in tandem here, and the forecast gets difficult when we have to kind of realize exactly how are they going to work together, and when are they going to phase, when are they maybe not going to phase, and how is that going to affect this whole storm system as a whole. Now, I will preface this by saying all of this is really based around this main piece of energy, which is that cutoff low that is currently bringing all the weather that we just talked about. And then the cutoff lows are notoriously difficult to forecast, unfortunately. I think the saying is cutoff lows is a forecaster's woes or weatherman's woes, something like that. Anyway, these things are just tough to forecast, and no matter what I show you in this video, I can guarantee you the impacts are not going to be exactly like the models are forecasting, but they are going to do a very good job at giving us a general idea of what to expect out of this storm system. Alright, so with that said, let's go ahead and now really dive into it. So, again, this is our main piece of energy. This is on Friday afternoon. Again, this is as that storm is pulling away and getting into central Texas and Oklahoma. This is our secondary piece of energy up kind of closer towards the polar jet, and then our third piece of energy down into the subtropical jet. And all three of these are eventually going to combine or at least move around each other in some sort of way here along the southeastern United States and eastern United States up the coastline. So as I move this ahead, this is our latest GFS model. You'll notice all of those kind of begin spinning around each other going into Sunday, and eventually all combine kind of into one system. At least the first two southern pieces. The northern piece of energy kind of tries to sneak on out of here without getting impacted too much. But overall, the GFS spins all of these pieces up, and we get a pretty strong storm system over sections of southern Georgia and the southern Carolinas going into this Monday. And eventually you'll notice the GFS kind of just meanders this around for a while off the coastline going into the middle of next week and even into later next week. This thing's still just spinning around off the coast of the Carolinas before finally going really just a couple of days before Christmas finally moves out of here. So this could be, again, a very long impact storm that, hangs around for a while. And that's one thing that could cause some interesting winter weather problems down the road. I'll talk about that here in just a moment. All right, so that's the GFS European model. Again, same general idea here. We've got the main piece of energy here, the northern component here, and then the southern piece down here. And we'll watch how all three of these kind of begin to interact with each other. And as I move this ahead, you'll notice on the European, the first top two pieces of energy kind of combine first, and then eventually kind of absorb the southern piece. They're all interacting differently, and as we show you what that means in the actual models themselves, you'll notice why that can cause such big impacts, just how these different pieces of energies kind of phase together or just move around each other. Now, a great way to kind of, figure out where exactly is the storm going to go is by using our ensemble members. And we'll start with our GFS ensemble members. You'll notice going into kind of this weekend, this is whenever that piece of energy really begins to form and get its act together in the Gulf. And again, this is going to be Saturday evening into Sunday. And this is almost pretty reminiscent of what we'd expect during hurricane season. We're talking about, a Gulf system beginning to get close to the shoreline, but this is December, so not really any tropical characteristics with this storm. Now, you'll notice going into Sunday afternoon on the GFS ensembles, pretty good agreement up to this point. We're going to have some kind of storm system, likely a pretty strong one below 1,005 millibars to as low as maybe 990 millibars, which at that point is getting into pretty strong, almost tropical storm strength. Now, this won't be a tropical storm, but the impacts could be quite similar, just much colder than what you would normally expect in a tropical system. So again, kind of agreeing up to this point on Sunday afternoon, pretty strong low pressure moving likely somewhere through the northern sections of Florida. Now, going into early Monday morning, our GFS ensemble members now move this thing kind of out near the Gulf Stream, just off the coast of the Carolinas, but you will notice some ensemble members do bring it inland at this point into the Carolinas, and again, a pretty strong storm system, some of these members getting down into the 980 millibar range. Which, if we get a low pressure that strong, we're going to have big wind problems across the southeast, and a lot of rain falling with that wind is going to cause some big-time power outage issues, and that's one of the reasons why it's just so important. Where is the track of this low pressure going to go? Just really goes really far in actually forecasting the impacts. Now, moving this ahead, this is like a whole day later. You'll notice the GFS not really that, different from where it was the day before, still just kind of meandering somewhere off the southeast coastline, continuing to push plenty of water inland in multiple ways. One, in the way of rain. Two, in the way of the potential of having some storm surge and coastal flooding. So again, multiple impacts there. And as I move this into the middle of next week, that low pressure still kind of just hanging around the same area, continuing to bring some of those impacts before finally most of the GFS ensemble members agree and kind of gets on out of here by the time we go into our Christmas weekend. And really by the time we get to the start of that weekend. All right, now let's take a look at the European ensemble members. A bit of a different story, but still, showing the same general start to the storm system. Going into this Sunday, again, all the European ensemble members agree we've got a pretty strong low pressure here, likely moving through Florida. But you'll notice the spread here even brings some of these inland into the southeast, which of course could bring its own problems. Now, moving this ahead a little bit, going into our Monday, this is whenever the European model kind of begins to, I don't want to say fall apart, but its members really lose consensus on what exactly they think are going to happen. By the time we're waking up Monday, some models or some members of the European say, we've already got a storm system all the way up into the northeast, while others are saying, no, this thing's still hanging back into the Gulf of Mexico. So a lot of, unfortunately, disagreement here, and as I said earlier, these things are just so difficult to forecast. We're just going to have to give it some more time. Now, one thing I will notice is we've got a big stretch of members here that bring this piece of low pressure inland into Georgia or the Carolinas. And again, if we get low pressure this strong below 990 millibars anywhere inland, that's going to bring a lot of wind problems and a lot of power outage problems. So that's kind of the worst case scenario. If we have low pressure just off the coastline here, we'll still see plenty of bad impacts along the coast, but if we bring it inland, we're going to see just as bad impacts at the coast that we do inland, because if low pressure is here or here, that does not affect the coastal flooding. We're still getting that flow around the low pressure to wrap around and bring in plenty of water from the ocean, which is, just kind of the unfortunate thing about it. Now, moving this ahead, this is also when the European ensembles really kind of split in their thinking. Some of these members kind of split the storm off and ride it up the East Coast, while others kind of agree more with the GFS and say, no, this thing's just going to hang around the southeast coastline and meander for a while. And that is also obviously going to pay huge dividends in what happens in the southeast compared to northeast. Now, I will say, this is a pretty solid chunk of members that are agreeing with the GFS a bit more, which right now leads me to believe that solution a little bit more, that it's a little more unlikely that this storm just easily rides up the coast. I think at this point it's looking more likely, not guaranteed, but more likely that this storm kind of stalls out somewhere here over the Atlantic and just continues to bring waves of rain and onshore flow for multiple days next week, as many of our models are suggesting. Okay, so what does this mean in terms of actual impacts where you're at? I know we've looked at all sorts of storm tracks. Well, obviously you're probably wondering, what does that mean for where I live? So moving this ahead in time, again, this is that storm system beginning to kind of get its act together a little bit in the Gulf this Friday and Saturday, and eventually working its way into Florida. Now, this is our latest GFS run. This is the operational run, and you'll notice this is, if you didn't tell me what month it was and I had to guess, I'd say, okay, this is probably September, October. Nope, this is December, and we've got a very strong low pressure riding up into the Florida Panhandle, and this would likely bring tropical storm-like conditions for much of Florida into Georgia, and potentially, if this continues inland, into South Carolina as well, and North Carolina, with rounds of heavy rain, bringing with that gusty winds, and very strong, move the map too far ahead there, and very strong onshore flow with these bands. So again, this is a solution that we really don't want so much. We would like to see a weaker low pressure system as well as one a little further offshore. Latest GFS though says this thing's going to move inland and then again just kind of meander around for a while and even throw moisture up into the northeast. Now, at this point, this is when things get kind of interesting down the road into next week. You'll notice we have high pressure here up in Canada going into early next week. And with that, look at these blue lines. This is our kind of our rain snow line, if you will, or at least wintry precipitation to just rain line. And we're going to have a relatively cold air mass up in Canada around this time that is going to try to move south and east into the northeast. Now, should that happen and this low pressure is still hanging around here, just throwing precipitation back into that cold air mass, we could unfortunately be dealing with a bit of an icy or wintry scenario for some folks going into the middle of next week. Again, this would be more of a icy look as we're getting more shallow cold air at the surface, which unfortunately could bring freezing rain and sleet for some major population centers next week. Now, again, this is still a week away, and I can guarantee you almost 100% that this isn't exactly what this is going to look like, but it does show the possibility that should this storm hang around long enough, it could very easily tap into some shallow cold air at the surface and produce some wintry weather going into next week. And unfortunately, this is kind of a really icy look, as this is light ice falling and easily accumulating over time. Now, moving this further ahead into time, going into, again, our Christmas weekend, luckily this low pressure finally tries to move on out of here and clear out by the time we get into Christmas weekend. But it's kind of crazy. That's still like 10 days away, and this low pressure could still be hanging around that far from now. So this is one that we could be talking about for a while here. So give me a second. I'm going to take a sip of apple juice. All right, sorry. Got sinus stuff going on. Fighting a little bit to get through this video, but where were we? Okay, yeah, so that was the GFS model. Let's take a look at the European model now, and you'll notice overall a bit of a different solution here. Again, still agrees that we're going to have that low pressure down near Florida beginning to develop going into late this weekend and into early next week. But the European model, again, the operational run, we looked at the ensembles, which of course still had many different possibilities with it. But the operational run itself kind of moves us across Florida and into the Atlantic Ocean, not really bringing it inland into the Carolinas. That would make the wind impacts much less, and even really the rain impacts much less. But the European, what it does do is continue to move this up the coast and out of here much quicker compared to the GFS. And also, I will add, different than a lot of its ensemble members as well. So right now I'm leaning a little bit more towards the GFS solution. That being said, I think it would be better for a lot of folks if we get the European solution, and that's one we should root for, especially for a lot of you folks who have a pretty busy travel week next week and I'm sure have plenty of holiday plans. The European model is a lot less impactful as a whole. All right, so now let's kind of talk a little bit about what are the chances of winter impacts out of this storm, and then we'll take a look at rainfall, and then I'll let you get on with your day. So unfortunately, again, we really just don't have much cold air anywhere that is already locked into place. Again, if we do get winter weather out of this, it would likely be because of that cold air mass in Canada that is able to move in quick enough to pump enough cold air under that low pressure and bring some icy conditions. But in terms of snowfall, the chances of seeing more than an inch of snow are basically below 20 or 30% for everybody with this storm system up and down the East Coast. So don't get your hopes up if you're hoping for snow. Not saying it's out of the question, especially in higher elevation places. It's possible, but as a whole, the chance of snow falling out of the storm system to anything more than just some token flakes are very slim. Now, where we do have a bigger concern, I think, is in the ice department, and you'll notice our latest blend of models does show some ice accumulating going into later next week up into the northeast, and this could even potentially get further down south should that cold air mass overperform and easily pump that cold air down the spine of the Appalachian Mountains. So definitely need to watch that. I think ice is going to be a bigger concern than snow with this storm if we see wintry precipitation whatsoever. But as a whole, one thing I can guarantee you is a whole lot of rain is on the way for somebody. Right now, I can just about guarantee Florida going to see a lot of rain, likely, places here registering at more than 4 inches of rain through sections of the Florida Peninsula. So again, Florida, I think guaranteed to see a lot of rain out of this. I think also the Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina coastline, 3 to 5 inches of rain is going to be pretty easy to come by. It's areas further inland and further north up the I-95 corridor that we've got some more question marks, if you will, about exactly how much rain is going to fall, all going to depend on that storm track as we continue to analyze these models throughout the week. So again, just kind of recap here, guaranteed some snow there into New Mexico and Colorado throughout the next couple of days, and even into sections of Texas, Oklahoma, and Kansas seeing some snow there in the western sections of those states. After that, all eyes turn to what does this storm do over the southeast going into early next week. And this could be quite an impactful storm for a lot of folks, especially if we get a solution like the GFS and a lot of those Euro ensemble members are showing. So It looks like a very real possibility, so I want you to prepare now, kind of think about what can you be doing to maybe tie down some loose things in the yards, and maybe also just get some of your errands done this weekend before next week kind of looks like a bit of a washout for a lot of folks for an extended period of time. Now, we'll definitely hope for something more like the European operational run, which shows a bit of a more of a quick hitter that kind of moves out sooner rather than later. Okay, well, with all that said, again, I hope you have a great rest of your Wednesday out there, and I will see you all tomorrow.